Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CDL podcast. In this episode, we're actually going to be back to a podcast episode. It's going to be about the rumored rosters and the already announced rosters and what I kind of think of them. So obviously, I would say about like 5 of the rosters have been announced. Plenty have been rumored, and a few haven't even been really talked about at all. And recently, before we get into the video, we've had some great support on the channel despite it being kind of the slow months for COD. Obviously, there's no official matches going on right now, so I want to thank you all for the support as the slow months have been going on. I'd love it if you kept up the support by dropping a like on the video, subbing for more content, and dropping some comments down below. We always appreciate the comments and stuff, and since it is the slow months, I'm still trying to pump out content for you guys to watch to keep you entertained on COD because, like I said, there's no official pro matches to watch. There's technically not even all official rosters, so there's not a ton to talk about, but we're finding ways to do it. So I'd appreciate the support if it was continued. And like I said, some of the rosters have been announced, like Chicago, Atlanta, Dallas, Minnesota, and most of New York. And then it's like OGLA has some players announced, but not the full thing. Then there's a lot of rumored rosters that have also almost been confirmed. Pretty much. So I'd like to go over the rosters that have been at least mostly rumored, like at least 3 of the players, and then obviously the ones that have been fully confirmed for the full 4 players, including some teams even have subs almost confirmed. And then I'd like to rank them from last to first and give some thoughts on each of them. But one team is going to be fully exempt from this ranking. There's only going to be 11 in the ranking. Paris is going to be fully exempt because they have no real rumors as to even one player. The CDL intel just yesterday. This is being recorded on Monday morning, September 21st, so the rosters are current as of about then. So if a roster change happens during this, I obviously won't be able to talk about it because I won't know as I'm recording. This is at about 9:40 Central Time on Monday, September 21st. So if a roster change happens during, I won't be able to talk about it, unfortunately, but I doubt teams are going to announce it this early in the morning. But CDL Intel just said, like recently, like a day or two ago, that Paris is completely lost and they have no idea what the hell they're doing. So they're going to be exempt from this because I can't really rank a team based on a roster that I don't know what it is. So Paris won't be in this ranking, so it'll just be 11. And then, like I said, some of these rosters aren't fully confirmed, so I'm basing it off like 3 players and maybe a possible 4th, or these 3 players and they don't even have like a 4th rumored. So it may not be that accurate. So I'm definitely going to redo this video for the way too early rankings once we have all the official teams. But there's plenty of rosters that are at least mostly formed or formed, so I wanted to at least talk about it before we get them all formed. So I reserve the right to change if some of these rumored rosters aren't correct. And once all 12 rosters are completely formed and confirmed, then I'd like to do like a way too early ranking before the game comes out, and then maybe a ranking once the game comes out before the play is started to see if we have any standout players and stuff. So without further ado, we're going to get started. We're going to go like 11 to 1, so the worst team. Like I said, these teams are pretty good. Once we get to like 9, I think you could put anybody anywhere pretty much. But number 11 is LAG. Unfortunate for them, they're way back at the bottom again. It's pretty clear to me. This isn't technically their official roster, but they're rumored, and they've been rumored for a while to have Assault, Silly, Apathy, and Vivid. And I see kind of what their idea is with this roster. They're going with Vivid as their young building block, kind of their franchise player. Was good for them last year, but he's, in my opinion, probably the worst rookie from last year. He was pretty good in Surge. He had like a 1.2 or 1.3. But in Respawn, he was super inconsistent. So I think he's also more of just a Surge star who needs Respawn talent around him to do good. And there really aren't Respawn slayers on this team besides Apathy. And like I said, I see what they were trying to go for here with 3 of the 4 EG World Champs members from World War II. But it feels like they should have gotten a much better team as they're in LA. They're in LA, which is a pretty desired destination, but they kind of fell short again on the roster. I did hear they're signing Mental as a bench player, and I kind of love that. He's probably the best Gears player of all time, although, I mean, that's not saying a lot coming from me. I don't really watch Gears. I've never really played it. But from what I hear, he's the best Gears player of all time, so I wouldn't be surprised if, like, at some point he takes, like, Silly or, like, Vivid's spot, because I assume he'll be, like, a flex or a sub. Most players that come over are. And if this happens, I'll be super intrigued with them. I think that they maybe have some potential to move up if Mental joins the roster, being that he's one of the greatest players from a different shooter on console. I feel like it'll translate if he gets some time. But overall, this roster is a roster that feels like it could win some games, but it doesn't have a very high ceiling at all. We've seen these 3 together so many times. They won one world championship, but other than that, they didn't really have any other success in any tournaments. It almost felt like a fluke world championship in a way when they made one run. But overall, this team just has a low ceiling to me. That's why they're in dead last right now. And then number 10 is London. I think they severely downgraded their roster if the rumored one is true. Granted, this could be completely false because they haven't really confirmed anybody on it besides Shawnee. So yeah, it's only one confirmed player, which is Shawnee, but it's 3 players rumored right now, so that fourth could make a huge difference as to where the roster get ranked. But as of right now, it's they have Shawnee, and then it's rumored that they also have Dylan and Alex. And I've heard the fourth could be like Zed or maybe even Zero. I think they should have stuck with Zero or Wuskin on the main personally, and then went with Scraps for a flex, and then Dylan and Jerd on subs. This roster seems like it's looking for a sub with Zed, or maybe even a flex if Alex decides he wants to run the sub instead of a flex. But either way, Shawnee on a main with likely Dylan and Alex just sounds like an underwhelming team to me. Sounds like a team that could win games but not have a very high ceiling, especially with the talent in the league this year, because there's even less players, so it's going to be even more top heavy because some of the worst players are being cut out by the 12 roster spots being cut. I'm kind of saddened by their moves. If their fourth does end up being Zero, and he's the main AR, and they put Shawnee on the flex, and then like Dylan and Alex on subs, I actually like them a lot, and I think I'd probably move them up the list because I think Zero's a great main. But it's more rumor that they have a Zed, so I kind of just think they're an underwhelming roster with potential to win some games and cause some upsets, maybe make like a top 4 run or 2, but I don't think they have a very high ceiling with this roster. And then number 9 is, like I said, it's now tough because I think that everybody from 9 up right now, since we haven't seen anybody play and we know the talent they have, and like I said, so many players have been cut, so the amount of talent on the rosters is just insane. But I do think that number 9, I have to put Toronto. I feel like I think they have the lowest ceiling of the teams left, which is a big thing that I'm going to talk about right now because since we haven't seen any of them play, most of this rankings is kind of just based on where I feel like their potential kind of bottoms out or like how far it can go. But like I said, I actually believe that everybody in the top 9 up has potential to be top 4, which is weird to say. But teams are just so stacked this year with the lack of players in the league. So Toronto has a familiar roster from last year. They have 4 of their 5 starters. From champs, they have Methods on the main, Cammy on the flex, Kleenex, and Bance on the subs. The reason they fall down here is because I don't really have faith in Bance. I think they should have kept Classic, in my opinion. They'd probably be up a couple spots. And then Kleenex and Cammy have been amazing, like last year and stuff, but they haven't been consistently successful, so it's tough to rank them super high. Like I said, I do think this team has like potential to be like a constant top 6 and maybe scratch the top 4. They're an intriguing and good team. Everybody from 9 and up is a very good team. That goes without saying. Everybody from 9 up is a very good team. But the reason I say with this team is Bance hasn't been consistent lately. Methods has been inconsistent with his placements recently, and then Kleenex and Bance have only done it for about a half a year for Kleenex and then a year for Bance. So I'd like to see them do it for like another full year and be consistent, and then we can start to rank them a little higher. And the next team here at 8 to me is Florida. It seems as though Sky's Havoc and Awakening are kind of locked to return. And then it's rumored that Fero is coming back. Fero potentially could be going to New York as well, it sounds like. But the reason I rank this team lower than many would probably think is, well, there's a couple reasons. They recently completely folded at champs, so I don't know if the chemistry is even still there. And to me, Fero is far and away the best talent on the team between the 4. So if he leaves for New York, they get much worse as well. So I rank them lower in case he leaves. If it's on LAN, none of these players besides Fero have won anything on LAN. And Awakening has never even played in like a pro LAN besides maybe at BO4. He was an AM at champs where he didn't place well at all. If he was even there, I think he did. I think he placed like top 24. So, I mean, they certainly have potential to be top 6 again, but I have serious doubts. I could even drop them below Toronto. I feel like I almost should, but I'll keep them at 8 now since this is where I did in my prep for the video. But yeah, they completely folded at champs, so I don't know if their chemistry is still there, if they keep 3 or even 4 of the players from the team. And then their best talent is possibly leaving. So once we see him, what he does, if he comes back, I feel like they could rise a little bit. But if he doesn't come back and they have to get somebody else, and they keep Havoc as well, I have pretty big doubts as to what their potential is again. And then number 7, we've got, this is where it pretty much becomes impossible to me. I made a note of that at number 7, it pretty much becomes impossible because at this point I just think we're throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks, because I think all these teams are pretty much even based on potential, and then once we see how good the players are at the game, they'll separate themselves a little bit. But I'm going to throw Surge here because I don't really fully know if this is their roster, and if it is, it could be nasty, but it's rumored to be Octane on the main, Gunless on the flex, and then Prestinni and Looney on subs. And this roster would be absolutely nasty if it forms, but there's been a lot of rumors that like Prestinni isn't on this roster anymore, or Gunless isn't on this roster, so I mean, we don't really know, which is why I put them at 7. If it is their final roster, I could see them moving up a couple spots, but I'm going to leave them at 7 for now. The team has a ton of slaying power, but it's a weird way to have slaying power, because usually your slaying power comes from like your main or your flex and then one of your subs, but this team's slaying power mostly comes from its main and its flex. Then they have pretty good leadership with Looney. He's one of the best in-game leaders in the game. But where my questions come in is with the vibes on this team. Gunless and Looney love to argue. And Prestinni can be kind of negative and have some bad vibes at times, and I don't really know how Octane will do with that bickering. He may be okay, but he played well with Slasher, which I know comes with a lot of bickering a lot of times. But Gunless and Looney love to just argue and scream at each other, and I think Prestinni might get involved in that because he's so close with Gunless that he'll feel comfortable. And I think Octane might just be overwhelmed with that because he seems like a guy that likes to like chill more, have fun in practice, and kind of be good vibes. So I could see that kind of struggling for this team. But then the other thing I think that might be an issue with them that drops them to 7 and not in the top 4 is I could see them struggling against teams with dominant subs like Atlanta. I mean, everybody will probably struggle against Atlanta, but I think teams with dominant subs will be able to strongly outslay Prestinni and Looney, and they may run into issues with that. So, like, I think if you have, like, a BZ and Simp on your team, or, like, Scump and Envoy even, or shottzyy and huke as your subs, I think they might completely just be able to outslay Prestinni and Looney, and Octane and Gunless are going to have to go absolutely insane to pick up the slack, and I think it's just tough to do that when your two subs aren't picking up the kills. So I think that's where they could have an issue, is sub-slaying. But overall, if this team, they have amazing potential, but I think, like I said, vibes and subplay could kind of get in the way of them being at the top. And then number 6, it feels weird to put this team, but they're like a top middle team to me. It feels weird to have any faith in them after last year, but that's the rocker. They have a confirmed roster of Accuracy on the main, Major Maniac on the flex, and then Priesta and Attach on the subs. This team is full of talent, but the roles are just awkward, which is why they drop a little bit. Accuracy is a very good main AR. I actually think that Major is a very good flex. He just hasn't had much of a chance besides using the Maddox last year. And I think he'd be better if it is a 2 AR meta next year. And then Priesta and Attach are very good subs, but I think Priesta prefers a flex. I know he does. And I even think that Attach likes the flex now more than the sub. So if Black Ops Cold War features very good subs, I think Priesta and Attach will excel, and this team could be like a top 4 team. But I see an issue if the ARs are like the strong gun in the game, like they were last year, where the M4 was so good when the MP5 got a little nerf, when they was like that 3 AR meta, because there are people who might feel like, man, I really want the AR, man, I really want to be a flex, but they're going to have to be using subs because Accuracy's not using a sub. I could see them running into issues where like Priest's like, well, I want the flex, and he takes the AR, and the Major Maniac's forced to run a sub, and they're kind of uncomfortable all year. So overall, I really like this team, and if it's a 2 AR meta, I feel like they could jump to the top 4. But I could see issues if the subs aren't that great. I could see a lot of role issues occurring, so I'm a little worried about them. Overall, I really like this team, though. I'm almost more excited to see what happens with this team than anyone. But yeah, I'm putting them at 6. And then number 5 to me is New York. Pretty much, like I said, it's impossible from 9 up. But now I really think it's like impossible from 5 up even. The reason I feel like number 5 has to be New York is, once again, they're not a fully confirmed roster, so it's hard to put them much higher, considering we don't actually technically know their 4th for sure. But they do for sure have Clay on the main and Zuma on a sub, and then Mac on either a flex or a sub, depending on their last player. It seems that it's down to 3 players pretty much. It seems that it's either John, Fero, or the French amateur player Hydra. And I don't know much about Hydra, but apparently Clay and many other pros think he's the best amateur player in the world, and Clay has had a very good eye for talent recently, maybe the best eye for talent over the last few years. So I like to trust his judgment on that. To me, the best case scenario is they pick up John or Fero to start, and then they steal Hydra from Paris Legion. He's not technically signed to Paris Legion or anything, but I would assume if he's the best AM in the world and he's French, Paris should be paying attention to that, but who knows what the hell they're doing. But best case scenario to me is they pick up John or Fero to start, and they steal Hydra, put him on the bench, and maybe develop him this year and eventually insert him into the starting lineup if like Mac doesn't perform or something, or save him for like next year or the year after. But if they get Fero, I think that Mac probably plays a sub, and then Fero will take the flex. And if they get John, I believe that John will probably take a sub, and then Mac will get the flex. I feel like Mac is good either way. And either way, I think they're absolutely disgusting and have potential to be the best team in the game. I think all 5 teams from here on out have actually potential to be the best team in the game. It's just, like I said, it's a crapshoot at this point. The top 5 is just a crapshoot of amazing teams. I think it's honestly just a guessing game of who's at the top. So for now, I'm putting New York mainly because we don't know who their 4th is. And if their 4th is announced as John or Fero, I would have no problem with you putting them as the best team in the game going into next year, because honestly, I have no idea where to rank everyone. But basically, they're here since we don't know who their 4th is. But they're a really good team. I'm not going to doubt Clay anymore after he just went back to back. And then at number 4, I'm putting the last team that we don't officially know their roster. I feel like that's only fair, and that's OGLA. They have Slasher, Kenny, and Tej for sure, and they also have Draza signed, but it sounds like he's probably signed to be like their 5th man. It sounds like their 4th could be John, possibly, or Gunless or someone else. If they do get John, they might be number 1 in my opinion, because if they had Slasher on the main, Kenny got to run a flex, and then John and Tej on the subs in a Black Ops game, I would never bet against that team. I mean, John has been an MVP in a Black Ops game. Slasher's been an MVP in a Black Ops game. Kenny has. And Tej, I mean, he was amazing last year for a while on Black Ops 4. He's super good in Black Ops 3 before he was a pro too in like the search community. And if it's a 3-sub meta and you've got John, Kenny, and Tej on subs with Slasher behind him with an AR, yeah, I'm never betting against that team. Then also if they have Gunless, I'm still putting them as number 1 probably, especially on LAN, because I mean, Slasher on a main, Gunless on a flex, and then Kenny and Tej on the subs. Yeah, good luck beating that team. Their slaying power is going to be unmatched, but they're also going to be one of the most organized, heavy slaying teams with Slasher and Gunless running the show. However, I'm going to keep them at 4 on the off chance that like Gunless decides to go to Seattle, John decides to go to New York, and they don't really get anybody super good, and they have to use Draza as their 4th. I think Draza's a solid player, but I don't think he's on the level of a Gunless or a John. But like I said, if they do have Gunless or John, I think they're the 1 or 2 team. And then if they have Draza, I would drop them to 4, or maybe even below New York, depending on who New York's 4th is. Like I said, if they get John, I'd probably drop them below New York if they have to use Draza. But either way, they're a team that has potential to be the 1 or 2 team, especially if they get Gunless or John. I'm just not ranking them. Like when I said I reserved the right to change some rankings, if this team ends up announcing that they have John or Gunless as their 4th, I'm going to probably shoot them up the rankings. Then 3rd, once again, it's super tough. You obviously know we're choosing between Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, the top 3 from last year. But it sounds weird, but I'm going to go with the defending world champs here. I'm going with Dallas. It sounds weird that they're 1 or 2, but I have the tiniest questions. And like I said, since we're at the point where all these teams are, to me, number 1 potential teams, it is all down to questions and random feelings that you have, because you could throw any of them at 1. If you throw Dallas at 1, I'm not going to question it at all, but I'm going to throw them at 3. I just have role questions on my number 2 team as well, so we'll see. They have Crim on the main now, and I'm assuming illey will probably be the flex, and then huke and shottzyy will be subs. And if the meta is a 3-sub meta, they might be the best team in the game, because having illey, huke, and shottzyy on subs with Crim behind them, they might be the best team in the game. I still think illey would actually be a nasty AR, like, well, not main AR, but like flex with an AR in his hand, because he's just such an excellent talent. My only question is the fact that I actually believe that Clay is a better main AR than Crim. Crim is obviously the GOAT, and he's probably the better overall player, but as a purely main AR, I think Clay's better. Crim is more of a flex, he always has been. So when we saw Crim on the main in World War II and in BO4 on Optic, he certainly wasn't the Crim we know. He struggled against top ARs, especially in BO4. He could not kill Octane versus 100T, kind of basically helped them to lose that champs, and then he also couldn't kill Arcitys on Sunday. He couldn't kill Arcitys or Octane, which when it comes down to the top 4 and the best teams, if you have a role that's getting dominated, like Crim was getting dominated in BO4 on the main AR, it's really tough. So I honestly think this team will be in contention for best team from day 1 to the end. But when you're picking out of these insane top 3 teams before the game is even out, it's just a complete guessing game, like I said. So I'm guessing because the only question I have is maybe Crim isn't the best main AR. He's more suited to be a flex, which is why he was so good with Clay, and that's why he was also so good with Formal. And that's why he was also so good with Clay again way back on Complexity. So like for that reason, I'm putting them at 3, but like I said, they could easily be 1. Then number 2, I don't think this will come to as much of a shock. I'm putting Chicago here. They feature Formal on the main, Dashy on the flex, and then Scump and Envoy on subs. Once again, a completely confirmed roster. And And to me, this team will probably be number 1 to start the year, like Scump teams always are. They'll probably win the first event like they did in BO4 and like they did in Modern Warfare. And then I think they'll probably have a bit of a struggle, not like a super bad struggle, but they'll probably won't win an event for a little bit, and they'll probably pick it back up around Champs time and start to play well again, because that's always what the Scump and Formal teams do. They kind of have a stretch in the middle where they're but they're super good in the beginning and super good at the end. The talent here is just undeniable. I mean, come on. There are obvious role concerns, just like Dallas, like I said. Last year, Dashy was benched because he didn't want to run a sub when Slasher was on the main, which he's going to have to do again this year, unless for some reason it's a completely 2AR meta. But it sounds like Hecz had a long talk with him about this. Even brought his mom in the call or something. Like, you got to realize this is a pro league now. If you don't get your way, you can't just bench yourself. To me, I think that Dashy realizes that he needs to accept this role until T2P are retired, and I think he realizes now, like, T2P probably only have 2 or 3 years left. I can stay on a flex here with Formal, and then I can take the main and become the face of a Hecz team with Envoy. Once T2P are gone, I can be a main, Envoy can be the main sub, and then we can be kind of like the duo that's the new T2P for Hecz in a way. And I think he's on Hex's team for good now. I don't think Dashy's going to leave unless something crazy happens. I think he's here to stay, kind of like Scump has been for like 10 years. I think that Dashy is now on Hex's team to stay for good after he finally came back again. And I think if he embraces the role of being a flex, he'll be a top 3 flex. I actually think it's his natural role if he accepts it. I think that like when he was the Maddox, that was like the best role for him. Granted, that was a weird flex because it was just a do-it-all gun. But I feel like him like having an AR on some maps and being able to run around on the smaller maps with the sub and slate, I just feel like that's his natural role because he does like to play a little faster at times. And he obviously doesn't have like the IGL skills to be a main AR yet. That's going to be more Envoy on this team, I think. So I just feel like a flex is his natural role. So if he accepts it, I think he could completely excel. And then obviously Scump and Envoy are a completely nasty sub duo. And Formal will always be a top 3, 4, 5 AR at least every year, despite his rising age. And if it is on LAN, this team will be a problem. They're obviously going to be the team with the most fans in the venue every time because it's Scump and Formal, it's Hecz. So on LAN, they're always going to be basically the home team wherever they go. And they're a bunch of players. I mean, Scump and Formal are both top 4 all-time in wins. Dashy's won on LAN before, and Envoy was very good on LAN last year. So this team will certainly be a problem on LAN, and regardless of the meta, they will no doubt be top 3 all year. But if it's a 2AR meta, they might be the best team in the game because Dashy will have an AR in his hands with Formal, and good luck beating Dashy and Formal when they're together with the ARs in their hands. It was kind of like Arcitys and Formal last year where they had the ARs. The team got a lot better. And the number 1 team is, shocker, big shocker, you couldn't have guessed it before the video, Atlanta FaZe. Somehow this team actually gets better from last year, in my opinion. They got to keep the best coach in the game, which can't go unnoticed, in Crowder, and now they add an in-game coach, in a way, in Arcitys. Arcitys is a top 5 main AR, no doubt, probably along with like Slasher, Clay, Formal, and Octane. He's for sure a top 5 main AR, even though some of you, if you just started watching Modern Warfare, you might not know that actually. I kind of forget that because he wasn't a main AR at all this year, so you might not even know how good he is as an AR. But that's the clear top 5 for me. No arguments for anyone else for main ARs. He's also the new IGL that they needed so desperately last year. They didn't really have an in-game leader last year. I don't even know who would be considered it. Like, was Simp or Priesta or Major maybe? I don't even know. But they did not have an in-game leader last year. That's what Crowder said was such a problem for them because they had 5 players who were insanely talented, but they had nobody who could, like, in a situation where it was 230 to 230, slow it down, break it down the game for him, tell everybody where to go and direct the troops. And that's Arcitys now. He's a very good in-game leader. He's able to keep calm. And they don't really lose much in the talent standpoint. Arcitys is now the new in-game leader, but I even think he's a better main AR than Major Maniac. So it's an upgrade in talent, and it also fills in the IGL role they so desperately needed. I think Celium can run a natural flex. I believe he's meant to be a flex. People wanted him to be a main, but I truly believe he is meant to be a flex, kind of like Dashy. When you're that talented, I think at times you do need to run around with a sub. You're more meant to be a flex, and that's what I think Celium is. And then obviously they have the Tiny Terrors at sub, Simp and Abizi. You guys know that I think that Abizi is maybe the best player in the world over the last few years. He's 100% no doubt the best entry sub. I mean, that's not even a debate. And then Simp is obviously in the argument, in the conversation for best player in the world over the last few years as well. He's a Champs MVP from last year, and he finished second, and he was in the MVP race this year. And this team is so scary because you can actually basically make an argument at times that each position on their team, they have the best player in the league. Arcitys at times could potentially be the number 1 AR if you think about it. At the end of the BO4 year, besides Octane, he was probably number 2, and he ended up winning champs. So I mean, you can't really say much about that, but you can make an argument that at times in the right game, Arcitys could be considered the best AR in the game, and he's that IGL that they finally needed. And then you could even make an argument at times last year and stuff that Celium was the best flex in the game. So they have that. And then Simp is probably the best Slain sub out there. There's not much of an argument. And then to me, the one that's for sure is Abizi is 100% no debate the best entry sub in the league. So you can make an argument that they have the best player in each position at any given time, which is just, I mean, mind-boggling to think about. That this team is so scary that to me, they have to be the team to beat. Going into the next game, in my opinion, there's like no argument they have to be number 1 right now. Now, if the game comes out and we see Dallas Empire, I mean, shotzzy's doing some jetpack movement with his insane ability to find movement, then I can see maybe putting them at 1 or something. But as of right now, before we have every team announced, Atlanta FaZe is completely the team to beat going into the next game. All right, wow. That was a lot to cover. We didn't actually go too long for it either. I also just remembered too, Temp is a potential player that could be an OGLA, and he would also still make them nasty as their flex. So I think they would still be a top 4 team then if it was Slasher, Temp, Kenny, and Tej. I'm super interested to see what like the question marks on each roster turn into. Like, what does New York do? What does Florida do? How does that affect OGLA? Do they have the dominoes fall wrong for them so they have to start Draza? There could be so many shifts if things happen, especially with whatever the hell Paris does, because that's an empty roster. They could all of a sudden like pick Gunless out from the other roster and say, hey, you can build whoever you want here, and then he could poach players, and then everything could change. There's so much talent left out there. I mean, guys like Slacked are still out there and stuff, and Classic. I mean, these are champions that are left out there. But thank you guys so much for watching and listening to this podcast. It's a little bit of a shorter one, kind of in between. But if you couldn't tell, I absolutely love Roster Mania. And I hope this passion showed through for all of you. I really love talking about it. I truly appreciate if you guys dropped a like and subbed to the channel. I'd love nothing more than to turn this into more than a hobby. Also, make sure you comment down below your thoughts on all the rosters. I absolutely love the interaction in the comments. Kind of like to see what you guys think, because, I mean, some of you might have seen a roster and instantly thought, wow, that's a number 1 roster in the game, like Chicago or Dallas, and you couldn't believe I didn't put them there. So maybe give me your rankings down in the comments, give me a little reason for each one, or if you have any other random questions about the CDL or any other things you want to say about this year or something, some question you want to ask me, even if it's not COD related, that'd be awesome. I love the comments. Maybe even show me your own ranking, like I said. Obviously, these could be so wrong because we haven't seen anyone play. So, I mean, heck, illey Guerillas could be the number 1 team next year. We haven't seen anybody play. Who knows? We haven't even seen anybody play with their team, or some of the players we haven't seen play at all because they didn't stream the alpha. And that's not even the final product, so the game could change a lot. But yeah, like I said, thanks so much for watching. Don't want to ramble anymore on that. Be sure to leave a like, comment, and sub to the channel. If you did enjoy, it really helps me out. All those things help me out a ton. And like I said, thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next pod or video on the channel. Have a great day, everyone.